Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Thanks for joining us in this episode of LinkedIn Live with Top Solutions. I'm your host, Suresh GP, and we have an excellent topic today that we want to go around. But before I get started, I want to know from where are you dialing? Because typically we get people from different parts of the world dialing in. And our topic for today is how to build a relationship centered organization. So if you are wondering how an organization can embark on a business relationship management journey, if you are a pro, if you are a person who's about to start your business relationship management, Top Solution is committed to build a single global BRM community. So, as part of sharing best practices, we do BRM brownback sessions. And for today, we have an important topic about how to build a relationship centered organization. And for that, the most important part was to have an agenda with Darrel Popovich, Chief Visionary Officer and COO of the BRM Institute. Um, Today, we're going to talk about the purpose of relationship centered organizations and why it matters, the BRM role and capability, because it's just not a role, but it's also a capability across sectors and functions, some of the key trends and expectations that are shaping the BRM industry, lessons learned and looking forward, and Q&A. Now, what is interesting for us is to also introduce our guest. Um, our guest, Darrel Popovich, is a seasoned executive with a remarkable 30-year journey in the technology sector. With a passion for leadership and business relationship management, Darrel has led pivotal roles, including CIO and HR Block Canada. His prowess in converging technology and business objectives has led him to coach executives globally and speak at renowned CIO conferences. So, as I said, Darrell is the Chief Visionary Officer and COO at the BRM Institute, and he's here to continue to drive innovation and leveraging. Thank you so much, Darrell, for joining us from Calgary, Alberta. I hope you're doing well, and we woke you up early in the morning today.
Oh, it's not that early. Thank you so much, Suresh, for having me here today. you know, Relationship centered thinking is a really important aspect of leaders, not just business relationship managers, and the CIOs that I've been able to talk to through my career when I was part of H&R Block Canada have led to all sorts of insights and aha moments that hope we can dive into a few of those today because the we're always looking for, as leaders as an organization, to make an impact and change to get the value results that the organization is trying to drive. And retrospectively looking back, it's amazing for me to see how often we as leaders forget that everything is driven through relationships. So today's topic will be super exciting, and I hope that the questions from the audience really get a sense of what it is they're looking for.
Absolutely. And we have got people, Pravin Sharma logging in from Los Angeles, California, Alberto, a regular viewer, joining in from Nigeria. We have Miguel Lima from South America. So we have Tommy Kyle from Atlanta. I think this person's name is familiar. Uh, Aaron Barnes linking in from Kauai High. So hopefully he's all geared up for the Portland visit. We have Kleber Souza from Toronto, Canada. We have people from Boston. So it's just coming on. We've just started off. So it's great, exciting time. So Daryl, before we kind of start this conversation, what is the role of the visionary officer? Because I'm pretty curious because BRM Institute came up with this new role called Chief Visionary Officer. What is what is the real reason that there was a need felt by the BRM Institute to have a Chief Visionary Officer? So can you just give us a little bit of background on why you were brought in and what was your mandate to change the way we are doing it? Because it'll be very interesting for our viewers to understand the vision that BRM Institute is stepping up to build that relationship-centered organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question to kick us off here. So, like so many in the BRM community, I thought that I was this singular person thinking that relationships were the core of driving an organization through their transformation, through their changes year in and year out, trying to hit their success measures, their KPIs, their et cetera, all of that. And halfway through my tenure at H&R Block Canada, I was introduced and I was asked to come and present at the BRM Connect conference in Banff, which is about a 45 to 60-minute drive from where I live in Calgary. And the funny story is they asked me just to come do myself, and I needed a little bit more than just get up there and talk. What agenda, what topic, what is the interest of the audience? All those things that a speaker's supposed to get. And they just said, no, just come. It's business relationship management. Come be yourself. And I tell you what, I was there, and by the time the second presenter in the morning had got up there, and like, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes into that presentation, I realized, like so many others, I had found the family I didn't know existed, and just like I wanted to be part of it. And I actually didn't get, after my presentation early in the afternoon, I didn't get from the podium to the back of the room before Aaron and Vaughn, two of the co-founders, like cornered me and said, "We want you to be part of this." And I said, "Well, that's great, because I want to be part of it as well." And so that was back in 2016, and I've been, had increasing roles with the Institute over that time. I joined the board in 2019, and we're celebrating our 10th anniversary as a community. And really, what we have is the building blocks. We have a community, we have a body of knowledge, and we have to take it to the next step. And so the Chief Visionary Office is all about defining together, capturing the vision and insights of the community at large and the thought leaders, and shaping a direction for us to go in. And my role and experience at CIO, my experience as in other leadership roles, allows me to connect with a number of those leaders in a way that we can really identify where we want to go in the next 10 years and make some significant headway in the next while. So part of what we'll talk about today, relationship-centered thinking, how to build a relationship-centered organization, what critical components to start building and shaping your BRM journey inside an organization. That's part of that visionary office, and an awesome responsibility to fill that role. But I'm going to roll my sleeves up and tackle it with every part of my energy that I can.
Right. So thanks, Darrel, because one of the things that has been inspiring is that I've been telling Aaron and to the BRM Institute, while BRM Institute started off in the United States, I think we need to build a community, which is a single global BRM community, and we cannot do it just alone, right? So the intent was also to socialize it to the rest of the world, right? Because every community, every culture has got its own way of dealing with business relationship management, their challenges. So I hope, Darrel, that as you start to get through this, to do a lot more site tours and visits to understand how this business relationship management actually gets implemented in different parts of the world, because then you will have a much more broader insight of how this can become a movement, right? I always think that business relationship management should become a movement so that every organization sees the value of embarking on this and building a relationship-centered organization. So I know our viewers are quite keen, so I won't ask you to get us started off in the journey towards the business relationship management, and let's keep the conversations going.
Absolutely, and for certain, we want to stretch out into the world. And I'll actually be in the UK in the early part of November. So Portland for our Connect conference, and then cross the Atlantic Ocean to be part of the UK community, and scheduling up when we can get more of the regional communities connected together and driving forward. And it really is our overall shared purpose. And this is really what we want the community to remember when they wake up in the morning. Are they absolutely connected and converged? Do they live and breathe this purpose together with us, is to improve ourselves, our organizations, and our world together? by connecting relationships to results. And it's that results piece that is part of the visionary component. You're going to hear an awful lot of the Institute talking about results and value and measure and how we really make that connection. And so, today is that we're going to venture down into all of these aspects as we drive forward. And so, but let's really dive into this first topic. What is achieving results? What is making that impact through relationship-centered organizations?
Yeah. There's a couple of questions that came in. I'll just probably
Perfect.
tell. Is this session recorded? Yes, Praveen, this is recorded. So you can watch on demand, but just don't miss this opportunity to ask live questions to Darrel, because as you know, he's a busy person. We have got him for an hour, so you'll probably make the best use of it. We have Randall checking in from Chicago. We have got people dialing in from New York, so it's great. Let's keep it going. Yeah.
So exciting. Welcome all. So I'm going to start with his word definition of a relationship-centered organization. And right at the very top, this is the component that your C-suite, your senior leaders, your board, your shareholders are going to want to know. What is that highly desirable objective of getting increased overall performance in your organization? And now I'm going to jump to the bottom. Great relationships have a different energy about them. And that different energy is palpable. Like everyone knows it. When you see some, two people that are connected, or a group or a team that's connected, has a different energy about it. And that energy creates an increased performance inside the organization. And walking up the chain, great relationships, increased limitless or energy driving improved overall performance is what the impact, the why statement that leaders are looking for. And it is this relationship-centered organization. And so I'm going to introduce this topic, and we probably won't spend a lot of time now diving into it, but the relationship strength between people, we want to start measuring it and calling it the R value. A scale of 0 to 1. And so the closer you are to 1, the more relationships that strength you have in the organization, the improved performance you have. And the closer you are to 0, you're going to see that impact where your organization can have a tipping balance, and then something can happen to it, and they're not able to respond as effectively. And so that's the word definition for all of those that need to have it written down. Now, the other half of the populace, let's dive into that mind's eye, that imagery. And so I'm just going to focus on 3 examples of relationships of the many different types that we can. One is the best relationship inside an organization. Another is the best ever project team. And then the third one is the siloed or the non-collaborative individual, and what that might look like. So in your mind's eye, imagine a neural network or a brain, and all the people in the organization are spread out. And they all have some relationships with each other. They don't talk to everybody, but just like
Right.
a brain, you can have these neurons firing between each other as people have relationship interactions. And so what does that best relationship look like? And I've used the mentor-mentee because it really resonates with me. I
Right.
remember my first mentor that really helped launch my career. And there was a trust component, there was respect between each other. He saw the potential in me, and I saw the wisdom and advice coming from him. And everyone understood and recognized it. And for all of you that had, your career progression, who is that mentor that you go back to and remember? That was it. But it wasn't the relationship that caused your career growth. It was the results that came from you, the delivery, the impact you had in the organization, the leadership, etc. But it was driven by that relationship. And so that second one, and I've also had the opportunity to be on best ever project teams. I had one early in my career, and I thought I would never, ever again. I even said it out loud. We're never going to have this again. But you also know visibly in your mind's eye, if you close it, this project team also, the relationship, the strength between that team, again, is different than anywhere else.
Right.
And again, yet again, connecting to these best ever project teams delivered something significant for the organization. They launched a new product. They responded to some competitive attack in their marketplace. They were able to drive innovation or drive transformation inside their organization. And so connecting this bright energy in your organization to the results that come out of it, that's another example in your mind's eye of, okay, now we get it. And so The third example is what happens if you have that siloed individual, that non-collaborative, and everyone knows that person. Oh, I've got that meeting with that person tomorrow. Oh, it's going to ruin my day. Well, that drains the relationship energy inside an organization. It's a void, it's palpable, and everyone
Right.
knows it, right? It can even bleed into the people around you, that the relationships they have with each other are drained. And so, what if there was a role, if there was a person, an approach that could actually improve relationship strength between each other, driving to bright? That BRM role. So as BRMs, what if all of your relationships were driving brighter? And what if your impact in the organization drove all of the relationships brighter and brighter? Well, as an executive, as a leader, you're going to have that translation of improved performance. You know, I've said this so many times. When I get my team engaged, they surprise me with the result. I don't have to set goals and targets. They
Right.
come back with far more delivery than I've ever expected and move the transformation if that's what I was driving inside an organization. So it really is, a significant component of what the idea of trying to get to that relationship centered organization. And then the last piece, what's the real why? I talked about, what is improved performance? Well, here's a couple examples. So the one on the left there for everyone is a major retailer, 17,000 employees, 50 stores over a 3-year period. The CEO attributes bringing in business relationship management, creating those connections differently, that drove a $300 million stock price increase, or sorry, a $300 million a year gross revenue and a resultant stock price increase of 130% by getting to that brighter state. And this top 3 Canadian telecom, they actually pointed at their customers. So they took their top 100 corporate accounts, not a small part of their organization,
Right.
converted their 90 client success managers to BRMs and invested $250,000 in training, consulting, and coaching. And they saw lifts of $19 million in the first year attributed to the BRM capability in those client touching, customer touching interfaces. And in the last 5 years, 77 million. So
Wow.
that's the why of driving to this relationship centered organization. You create the
Let,
bright lights and you can start to see this kind of an impact.
let's spend some time on this one. This is a fantastic why, because this will resonate like music to CIOs and CXOs around this part. But let's be honest here, Darrel. As you start to see this aspects, we need real more case studies to tell the rest of the world, right, what is possible. Because when these numbers come as part of everybody's balance sheet and stock price, it's very tangible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times today, BRMs are wondering, whether BRM effort is still tangible or is it still intangible. There's a lot of tussle between how is some of the work that I'm doing is still going to be translating into dollar value, cost, and market share and stuff like that. Because most of the times the BRMs sometimes do not play at that level. So any thoughts on other impact beyond this tangible value that you see companies doing for business relationship managers?
Absolutely. The last 10 years, we have the great stories from the BRM community. You engage in all the conversations of how they come in and they're part of a culture change. Like they
Mhm.
actually are able to impact how people work better together. And some of those metrics are around, internal customer sat or department to department sat scores, going and polling and surveying the leaders. How are we doing as a BRM? Or, depending on where it starts, if it's in IT or if it's in finance or if it's in HR, how are we providing service delivery and measuring the improvement? And BRMs helping drive that relationship centered thinking increases those scores. And when
Sure.
you increase those scores, you have senior leaders feeling they can tackle more and putting more on the strategic plate. And those are the stories that we hear. But I'm going to come back. It's going to be a repeated thing from that visionary perspective. BRMs have to be connecting to these hard, tangible benefits, the impact on the overall results. A great score is fine and dandy until your leader moves. Because I've also
Right.
heard so many times, oh, I have a new CIO, and now our entire team role is in jeopardy. We have to prove our worth.
Yeah.
And so you can have that culture change, but a new leader comes in and they're going to shape culture. That is just part of a new leader. And so they're going to question what they have inside internally to help shape the culture. And they're going to shape the culture to drive results. And so this is the most important thing on my mind anyway, is how the BRMs connect to these kind of results impact while shaping culture underneath.
Sure. You can go ahead. I'll see. I think a couple of people are there. My team, along with mentors, I've been delivering all these years. Great. We have a birthday boy, Keith Sutherland. His birthday is my partner in North America. So thanks, Keith, for spending some time. Miguel says that's a great example. The impact on results are not siloed, but the results of one organization work towards fulfilling business objectives and strategies. That's great. Um, so let's get this part to do. There's a lot of people coming in from various parts. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, excellent. So, you know, I think I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit, even for like dive into a little bit about the role and the capability inside of an organization. And so, you know, so often we hear, I've been in conversations with leaders around, oh, you know, I don't want to ask for headcount. I think BRM is for everyone. I want everybody in the organization to have BRM. And they are not wrong. Like
Right.
BRM is a critical capability skill set of every influencer in an organization, from leaders, your managers, your senior execs, human resources, the HR professionals and analysts, project managers, right? So they're trying to deliver value by getting projects done. And what is it? It's all about relationships of the internal team and relationships to the stakeholders, like receiving projects, business analysts, again, like really focused on the process definition and improvement and the impact on value, and the resultant draw on relationships to understand the process execution. ITIL service managers, right? So those that have been service managers and they're certified. You know, I was the 9th certified ITIL manager in Western Canada way back in the day. And all of these functions and more, business relationship management creates that discipline of understanding how to shape the expectations of improving an organization internally. And so
Right.
the capability needs to exist in everyone. The role, however, is that disciplined business relationship manager that can help all of these leaders, all these influencers in an organization improve
Right.
their relationship management, to understand their relationships and move it forward. You know, and the sectors that we're hearing, I started listing them off. I'm like, why am I even trying to list the different sectors? Like, we have a heavy influence in government and healthcare and higher education. We have examples in retail. And, you know, I just, instead of just listing them all, you know, we have dozens of organizations in pretty much every sector across the globe that are trying to figure out the right capability and role mix inside their organization. You know, and so just to repeat, the role is the individual relationship manager whose job it is to improve how the capability exhibits itself inside of an organization.
Right. And in fact, I think it is relating to the community of interest that we have within the online campus, right? So we would definitely have about 30,000 members who are part of the group. And what I really find it fascinating is that you have different communities of interest in government, healthcare, higher education, retail, financial services. And what's going to be interesting, even to the BRM Connect this year, is to have that socialization between the community of group, because they find themselves to be a part of the family, where they go there and start talking about this whole thing. And one of the things I get fascinated during these conferences, Darrell, is they say this is the only conference where we don't need to explain our role as a BRM. because everybody understands what we are talking about on the ground, right? So there's a lot of value in sectors being done. So it's highly encouraging to see across globally, there's a lot of adoption.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that are able to attend, so often we hear it is the most impactful conference they've ever attended. And it's certainly to come in and be, that same story. It's the family you never knew you had, but it's the connections you create to go and help you make the impact when you get back to your regular day job in your organization. You bring those nuggets, you reach back out to the community, whether it's a regional community or one of these sector industry communities, and ask the question, how did you do this in your organization? And you can keep improving how you move forward.
So there's a couple of thoughts that has come from the viewers. Keith says, with organizations in full adoption of agile concepts, including product managers, could be on the provider or partner side, highlights the need for BRM. Again, talking about where is the BRM position is. So in your opinion, Darrel, where do you see the BRM being? On the provider side or on the business partner side? Where do you think there's a more focus coming on in the recent times? And obviously, we'll talk a little bit about the trends, but any quick thoughts on that?
I hope that I don't, when I answer this, that I don't feel like I'm not, because I actually don't see it on provider or partner. Right. It really is, right? So I already said I'm gonna be talking about connecting to value, the impact on results. Well, the other aspect is connecting to strategy. And so many times we do see and hear that it comes from the provider, that the BRM capability, the push moves and starts from the provider side, because that's where much of the expectation management is so messed. So, okay, we got to improve this. We got to understand how to work on the right things at the right time and do it right. We'll start with the provider component. But if you're not connecting to the overall strategy, then the BRM is just this go-between.
Yeah.
The role is to connect strategy to results.
And it's also saying that IT people are largely in a room full of extroverts. This is the experience about at BRM Connect with Keith last time when he came over to San Antonio, and I think it's true, right? Because a lot of times we seem to be reticent in some of the facts, but it's changing gears. Okay, so can't wait to see what else is in store. One of the quote from Tiasa is, based on what we said, she wants someday to be at Connect. We hope that we'll have more regional Connect. She's based in the Netherlands. But yeah, so I think we need to do more than just one conference in the US.
I don't want to get everyone excited with what I hope that we can get to in the next 2-3 years of being able to have, Connect conferences in some pretty significantly different time zones across the world. But certainly we are going to be driving regions and groups at a much, and not we, the community's driving it. And so we just need to figure out how to support together.
Sure.
I'd like to, if I may, really dive into a little bit about, I mentioned building a relationships in an organization, some of the aspects. And so a real key trend and the expectation of, the visionary office for the next 10 years is how to create that definition of relationship management and connecting to results. So, we're collecting a bunch of the concepts together and introducing it together in this component of business relationship management mapping. And so it's a 5-step plan for those asking, well, how do I build that relationship centered organization? How do I have the lights firing? And then how do I have those what I'm calling an impact tile, that success, that case study, where I can say, look at what we accomplished together. And so 5 steps here, and I'll walk through them quickly. The first one is create a relationship map. And so what that means, back to that question, where do you start the provider? Well, it has to start somewhere in an organization. So which function or which department is really starting the definition and driving the capability? And so often it's IT. We're hearing it's in finance. We're also hearing, it's in supply chain, or it starts in that provider. And so this works really well if you start there. And then you map out the rest of the organization. You've got your regional business units, if that's how it's structured, and you can, however it's structured, you have the rest of your corporate areas. You have your operations, you have your sales, your external partners. And so whatever your structure looks like, you map it out, connect to your executive team and your board of directors. And then here's step 2. And again, you heard me say at the top, this is where we miss so often, is connect these relationships to the results. And I've used this as the example here. Everyone has different results.
Right.
But what are your regional business units driving for that stock price increase or that gross revenue? There's a revenue lift. And then in some areas, there's a cost decrease to be able to connect the relationships to those results. So you now have your organizational built out. You've mapped out who's contributing to what result impact you're trying to measure. And then now you measure the relationship maturity. And so for those in this call, this is the relationship maturity model, right? Whether you're living in an ad hoc world where things are coming left, right, and center, and you don't know what's on the table, and you don't know what's falling off, or you're moving up into order taker where you just get something to me by end of day or end of week. Service provider where you have SLAs, whether you're hitting them or not. Trusted advisor where you're at the table together. And strategic partner where you're coming to the table with the ideas about the future. And so what level of each of these relationships in your organization are they at, so you can understand where you have strength and where you have areas to really measure and observe. And then you do the identify relationship owners. And so part of what we've talked about in BRM community and the body of knowledge is you start with the relationship owners. You do your key relationship map, and
Right.
well, that's step 4. So how do you go back and connect to results, and then go backward and measure the maturity between individuals? And once you've identified your relationship owners in your starting function and matched out your relationship owners in the business, now we come back to that role and capability. What is the capability of these 2 individuals to improve the relationship or maintain it to the need necessary to have this impact on results you're looking for?
Well, that's a very valid point that you said, and I wanted to stress upon that point.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the organizations start with identifying relationship owners. So they are trying to say, hey, you know what? You're going to be the BRM for IT, you're going to be the BRM for finance. And guess what? Good luck. Go there and start building relationships. So they have freaking no idea about how this is going to work. And it's everybody's going to make their own ways of making that connection. So I love this point that we need to set the context about setting a relationship map around what are we trying to do, the big picture view that everybody in the value chain understands at one place. And it also makes sense now because I was actually talking to one of my business partner a couple of years back where they were to renew the contract with TaUB Solutions. And he said, we were in the discussion, and he said, Suresh, you know what? There are a couple of goof ups that happened in the delivery, but you're a bunch of great folks. We have some great relationship over the years. So we'd be happy to sign the contract. So that way, the only reason we got the contract renewed was because of the relationship. So I can definitely vouch for the effort that he put in to do it. And it's also about not just one part, right? Throughout the ecosystem of people building that connections of mentor-mentee project teams. So it's going to be, people should know about you, right? It's not just about a direct relationship. It could also be an invisible relationship behind the scenes, because all that you take, people are observing, right? You'd never know whom you are impacting, but this all makes sense because you're now looking at the holistic picture. And I love that the power diagram about how it flashes off to see how we can make that connections to be more intense. But this is great. This is great stuff. Please go ahead.
I'm going to imagine for a moment how that conversation about renewing your contract could have gone, right? Because as the CIO at H&R Block, so many times I would pull my leaders in a room and I would have the exact same conversation and say, okay, contract renewal is up, and here's what the objective is. Do we renew with this external partner to solve the problems that we have going forward ahead of us?
Right.
And we'll go around the room and
Right.
everyone gets a say, right? And so
Right.
as soon as someone says, well, you know what, they totally messed up and I can't trust them to fix it. But in your case, it sounded like, hey, we had two mess ups, but we can tell through the relationship, the
Right.
TaUB Solutions, they're going to work with us in a relationship together to help us get what we're looking for. And
Yeah.
so the flip side, yeah, that's when relationships break and you lose some of those partnerships and you lose that
Yeah.
trust. So for certain, and I've also heard, and I want to just share this, is so many times people ask, oh, how, like, where did we start, or how do you start the BRM journey? Well, we want to point our BRMs at somewhere easy. We'll point them at all the corporate areas,
Right.
right? We'll point them at finance, and we'll point them at HR, and we'll, supply chain and the other corporate areas. And then just look at the rest of the value driving results that you miss by not contributing. And so part of the BRM implementation plan is to understand the key performance relationships, another term
Right.
we're introducing, of all of the parts of the organization, including external partners and sales. How many of them are necessary to drive the results you're looking for? Because if you just focus on one area of the organization to build relationships with, you're going to have that CFO or that CIO come back and go, what's the value?
Correct.
Where is the impact on that overall relationship? And so this last step is the implementation plan. So where do you bring in the BRMs to help improve the relationships across the organization to where they need to be, or manage it, right? Like the leaders on either side, these individuals and these individuals, they also have day jobs.
Correct.
And so managing that relationship, can they get the assistance and help to really make sure that structure and discipline within the body of knowledge are followed to be able
Yeah.
to help get that overall connection to the results impact you're looking for.
Some of the comments coming in. Glenn joining in from Vancouver, probably. Organizational context is important driver to evolving BRM capability. As in any relationship, there is no one size fits all. I think the key tenet is that we need BRM in every role. Again, going back to that aspect of capability more than anything else. I see more joining from California, pretty early for some of those people in world. Prem says that relationships, referrals, synergies are the main reasons for organizations to be formed and businesses executed. Without a relationship connect, we don't see success. Absolutely true. In the way that I think it's going to be all what we do right now, and then start building those small connections and relationships that's so beautiful in evolving things. Bas makes a great, interesting point. Results mean different things to different organizations. So you did touch base on this one, Darrell, about profit revenue in some cases, but community impact, BRM. Now let's talk a little bit about that impact, because I think Baz makes a great point. Now, a lot of these government sectors that you see, which has BRM, I see every county in North America has BRM roles, a lot of BRMs being done. How are they driven by, what kind of results are they looking at it, considering that they're more of like a non-profit organization, they work for citizens and the welfare of the citizens? So how does that work? Is that changing the dimension of results and impact very differently?
Well, it doesn't change the structure or the dimension, but it certainly changes the engagement and enthusiasm when you get it right. And so I'm
Correct.
going to use the example. Baz actually was helping out in the Southern Africa region. And so UNICEF in 21 countries had a summit where they're coming in and talk about how to improve, and their IT leaders were coming together to, like, how do we get a standardized, consistent approach to improve the impact IT has inside an organization to drive those results. And so they walk through this exercise to take a look. And Baz shares the story, and I just love it. I wish I had been there. I really wish I'd been there. But he says, like, the looks on everyone's faces, there was acceptance of knowledge, right? And everyone knows what that looks like. You're in a class back when you were in university, and you're like, yeah, I get it, I understand it. But when they paused and really asked the question, well, what are the results that matter in this organization? And it's like, wow, took a little while, but when they all got out at the end of that little exercise, and it was emergencies responded to, mothers protected, children fed, the energy in that room, because now we're connected to the results that
Right.
matter.
Right.
Right. And so you just go through all the nonprofits, you go through the government organizations, and right. So city, provincial, state, federal, it isn't revenue and cost. Those are just things needed to provide services to their constituents, whether it's citizens of a city or the country. How are we delivering the results that matter? And so when you connect the right results, then the relationships really matter.
And it's also very impactful, right? When you say about women protected, mothers protected, and child fed, you just have a complete different part of, oh, this is why I'm getting out of my bed every day. This is your ikigai. This is my purpose of why I'm driving and how I'm making my difference. And
Yes.
it's so important, right? Because people can get um, completely lost in the day-to-day routine issues, escalations, tasks, and stuff. But every time they need to keep them reminding of why am I doing this work? How am I going to make an impact? Right? It's also very tough, Darrell, to be honest. Right? Sometimes we lose that attention because we're having a lot of things to juggle around on a day. So, is there any kind of tips that you would suggest to keep that focus back to why we are doing this, going back to the same powerful purpose statement? How do we keep us grounded to reflect upon the statement of what is the impact that we are creating for our business partners, for our organization? So, how do we get that always on our radar?
That's I've been asked that a number of times, and so not that I've been absolutely diligent with this practice my entire career, but when it worked well and the teams were so excited and engaged, is I would get up and I would think, what is the value, that top level value that I need to be focused on to make decisions throughout the day? What is that purpose? What is that value? And then at the end of the day, end of the workday, did I make decisions and did I spend my time connected to driving that impact? Whether it was revenue, whether it was helping our Canadian residents get the most tax return for their year, whether it was some of the other parts of my career. So you start off in the morning. What is the purpose that I'm trying to be successful at, to have an impact? And then did I? And so don't beat yourself up, right? Like at the end of the day, if you didn't, you always have tomorrow morning, but start the morning off with, all right, what is it? What is this value at the far right? And how am I linking it? How am I linking what I do? How am I linking what everyone else does to that? And then did we make an impact today?
Yeah, great. The last question on this one is, how much time does it take to get to this 1 to 5? This is always a question of, well, if you want to implement something as a relationship centered organization, great. That'll give us a 5 tip. So, how much time does it happen? Because everybody is starting to, what's the level of funding we need to have? What kind of resources we need to have? How much time does it take? So, any kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't want to give the answer that it depends, but it really does depend. Now, start small with, don't pick the entire organization, like all 300 million gross revenue. Don't pick, you know, trying to boil the ocean. It's used often, but it's not overused. You try to boil the
Right.
ocean, you're not going to make a difference. So select part of the organization and then really measure, right? And so you don't have to come in and add, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 BRMs in an organization to be successful. You
Right.
measure the relationship strength of each of the relationships that matter, and then you just report on, okay, are we making the impact? And correlate. We have this relationship that isn't very strong. Was there an absolute impact on the results? And if there was, now you're coming back to leadership saying, well, look, because of this ad hoc relationship, this maturity of one, we had an impact of operations drive missing deadlines for the regional business unit getting out for our results impact. Are we going to go through another quarter, leaving it at a 1, or are we going to do something about it? And then coming back to Glenn's statement, Glenn Ramoris, can the relationship owners, these two individuals, can they improve the relationship on their own by a different focus of their time? Because they are responsible for the maturity of this relationship, or do we drop in some help? And that's where the business relationship manager can come in and help those two with whatever's going on to improve that relationship. So you start small, you map it out, and you measure. Like, you don't even actually have to do anything different in your organization other than map this out and connect it to what's the results impact for where we do have relationship management capability in people and or individuals and roles.
Right. I was absolutely amazed to see the involvement of city, state government, and higher education at last year's BRM Connect, not organizations typically focused on profit margin. We're still getting some questions. I'm going to read it from, we have a community, it's called the TaUB's WhatsApp group. So I'm trying to get that thing. So first question is, as BRMs, we work with leaders of business units. Sometimes unexpectedly, you find that your boss may not feel comfortable with your popularity, so to speak, with the leaders. How do you manage that? That's the first question.
So you have a relationship with your boss that you need to nurture, manage by measuring and improve. So there are times where I was a okay, let me take a step back or two. Those senior BRMs in those senior roles, right? When I was introducing BRM as the capability and the role at H&R Block, I really was absolutely looking for who can I trust to go have conversations that I would have in the room without me.
Right.
To guide and focus the conversation. Because then I can be in more than one place at one time, same time. I can be all over. I can have multiple conversations driving the value, maturity, changing the culture. Making time to ensure that those individuals were connected together as a team and with myself.
Right.
As those individual members of mine, the onus on them is to understand my comfort level of who they're talking to and building that strength with, right? Because, so many times leaders get burnt by peers, by individuals throwing them under the bus, by taking credit. And so be aware and cognizant and build that relationship with your leader and make sure they're aware of what you're doing, and then visibly make sure that you are rewarding the organization, not yourself, not the leader. Like, where's credit due, and give the credit where it's due. Don't run around taking credit for yourself. And then the very first time that you exhibit in a way that erodes that trust of your leader, well, it will take 7 to 21 times to gain that level of trust back. So don't mess up. Always be cognizant of where your leader's at. I hope that helps.
Excellent point. One other question was, how do you manage if the business leader doesn't engage at a level below his own and you don't get the support from your boss? You're trying to be an aspirational person to become more strategic, but you're not getting support and from your leader. So how do we go about, is that kind of things that I can step up and I'm not trying to bypass and knowing IC Ball, she's saying we don't want to bypass the whole process of the boss to do it, but that there is a genuine interest to for the benefit of the organization at the whole. It's not about who is right or who is wrong. So you are in this difficult spot. You got stuck somewhere. You're not able to navigate through that maze.
Yeah. So I'll just share two components top of mind. And the first one, what is it that leader needs to look successful? What is their metric? What are they driving? Right. And so if they're trying to maintain culture, well, okay, how do you change culture while maintaining culture? And now your job is far more difficult as a BRM, is to not
Right.
change what your leader is very comfortable with, and yet still change the value impact, the results that they're measuring. All right. So kind of a generalistic answer, but everyone think of, okay, what do they measure? They're measuring something. So
Right.
now measure those same things for them.
Hmm.
And so here's the second one. Do not bypass your leader. Because if you do that and you're trying to impress leaders above, all you've done is shown them as soon as you become their direct report, you may bypass them.
Hmm. That's a fair point. That's a great point to look at, is that you have to work through the thing, and you cannot just bypass. I think it's a fair thing to be asked, right? So we have 10 minutes to go up. That, yeah, we can go ahead on the next slides and
You
stuff.
bet.
There's great conversations going around.
Yeah. So, kind of getting to wrap up, looking forward, and we've actually touched a lot on this. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. This is a famous quote that I had on many of my presentations. And so, um, I've spent an awful lot of time talking about connecting to value. We've shown some diagrams and some approaches about, like, think first, wake up in the morning, go to sleep at night. How am I driving to value? Well, that value seen at the very top level is strategy. So how is the results and the value impact you're having? How are you connecting it to those strategic objectives and imperatives, right? And so you can get all of this stuff from your annual report, right? And so are you writing sections and paragraphs in the annual report as a BRM about how the organization has shifted and changed to be able to show, here's what the impact on value to the strategy is? And so, these last components of and connecting strategy to results through relationships. So we showed a relationship map. And here are the relationships. You have strength, you have weaknesses in that value chain. And so where is the impact of strength and that those low relationship scores impacting against the results? And then connect to that strategy, right? Where's your strategy? This is that other component that you wake up in the morning and you go to sleep at night, and then our value. Boy, I'd love to get the community at large starting to, how do we measure relationship strength in an organization? And I talked about key performance relationships. So what are the ones that matter most? In that very early picture of the brain network, and you had that void. Well, everyone knows there's those two people that don't get along, and somehow we accept it.
Right.
And you know what? You could accept it unless, as you map out, do we need that relationship? Do we rely on it to drive the relationship, to drive the impact and results forward, right? And so this is that culture shaping. Sometimes you can accept where individuals don't get along, and other times you have to go and shape the relationship, because we can't allow a poor relationship between individuals to translate to a poor relationship in the business aspect.
So
You know, go
one
ahead.
question kind of on this one, and I'm kind of getting this to the part. A lot of organizations, as we start to do consulting, coaching, they focus on processes, they focus on technology because it's driving value. There's a lot more focus on technology changing the whole digital transformation journey. Very few people pay attention to changing culture, understanding, being empathetic, right? So Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, says that we need to move from IQ to EQ to LQ, right? Intelligent quotient to emotional quotient to love quotient, treating people with respect and love beyond just the titles. So many organizations are still not focusing on relationship building exercise. They still look at resources, right? They don't really look at the value that the relationship is going to be built on. So in an AI driven world, because everybody is talking about generative AI, how do you think this relationship is going to make a difference, an impact? Because I think there's a lot of moving parts towards the thing. And how are relationship managers, not just BRM, but the role, discipline, and capability is going to help organizations thrive in the next 5 to 10 years from now? Because by that time, We don't know, someone else is talking like me and you, an AI bot talking about in the next LinkedIn Live. But how do you see that relationship centered organization as well as relationships thriving in the future with technology advancing so rapidly each and every day?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I almost want to say we could get lost
Yeah,
in relationships by diving into, you know, generative AI and just connecting to this technology that changes our world. You know, I um my first real use of Chat GPT. I'm a head coach for a hockey team. I've been that
right.
for a decade now. And I had one of my hockey kids reach out to me and say, you know what, I want to get into this high performing athletic program at my school. And I need a reference from one of my coaches.
Hmm.
And so, and so as a leader of kids, everyone knows this is what you live for. It's some kid coming later and going, I want that. I want that connection. I appreciate your view. And so I wanted to do the best job ever I ever
Right.
could. Because I actually like this was one of, you know, not that any coach has favorites, but this was one of my favorite. Why? Because he learned. He wanted to learn. He had that passion for learning. Well, I knew this was going to be a 2.5 hour exercise to put the words together that I wanted. I used ChatGPT, and in about 3 minutes, I had all of the words that I wanted to express the emotion and the gratitude and the potential of this kid. And I was able to really make sure that I didn't miss anything.
Right.
Because in that 2.5 hour time frame, I knew I wasn't going to have 2.5 hours. I was going to have maybe 45 minutes. And
Right.
instead of shortchanging what that relationship connection, I actually strengthened it. The parents were so appreciative. The kid got into the athletic program, and the relationship was strengthened with that one individual. And so BRMs have the ability to use technology and show others how all of this new technology can actually free up time to do what we're supposed to do, strengthen relationships so that we focus on what's most important to get to those results.
Excellent. Awesome point. It's great conversation so far, is what um, Alberto is talking about. So we have one or two questions that we can take up. So if you have any questions for Darrel, this has been a scintillating talk. And I think a lot of personal conversations and personal stories that people could relate it better is amazing. But before people come in, I would probably ask one more question, is that as you start to see relationship managers, one of the biggest challenges relationship managers facing today is sometimes they feel that they are thankless job. Sometimes they do all the hard work behind the scenes and people don't appreciate. So how do relationship managers, business relationship managers, drive their persistent efforts, knowing that they still have a job at hand to deliver, even though they don't get credit? Isn't that tough sometimes? Everybody needs a little bit of praise and support to drive in, but sometimes it's pretty hard. So what would be your advice for relationship managers to take on their baton to continuously persist in that journey?
Yeah, you know, if you're one of those individuals that needs to have daily pats on the back, this job's probably not for you as the role.
Right.
Okay. Um, but there are moments of truth, key moments where the business relationship manager doing their job properly of mapping out, measuring the impact and results, when all of a sudden on a Friday afternoon, CFO starts asking all the senior leaders, show me your top half projects because we're cutting the bottom half. And when the relationship manager is able to provide the metrics saying, this is your top half value, and if we got to cut costs because of whatever, I mean, breaches happen worldwide, like catastrophes happen, and the revenue's not there. Those are the moments where relationship managers, whether you get the accolades or not, those are those types of proud moments where you've done your job and you've done it well because you're able to respond. And all of a sudden, people are looking forward as opposed to trying to look backwards and finger point and blame and who's better and job, like throwing people under the bus to keep their jobs. So that it's key moments versus
Excellent. So you
good
talked
data.
about the key moments of truth that's you need to consistently work. So if you're a relationship manager as a role, discipline, and a capability, please remember it's if you are looking out for pat on the back every day, you're in the wrong job. So it's very clear that you're not going to get a pat at the back. But having said that, like Darrell mentioned, that you will have moments of truth where the whole world will see your shiny, bright avatar on how you make an impact. So it's all about making an impact and making it great. So thank you so much, Darrell. Any closing thoughts about BRM's relationship-centered organizations and the future of BRM for people to get excited and take charge?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today, and what a great conversation we've had. Looking forward, we want to do so much more and hear the stories from everybody. So start sharing your stories with the community, share it with the institute, share it with others of what those key moments of truth and the value impact. We know what kind of an impact we can have on the world, and we just have to make sure that when the world looks to ask the question, we have the answer.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone, for being patient for our review. Just over an hour now. Please put your feedback for Darrell if you enjoyed the conversation, because this helps us to have the moments of truth that we did something impactful to the community. As part of the whole thing, as you know, that BRM Institute is celebrating the 10th year anniversary. So we look forward to seeing you all at the BRM Connect in Portland, which all it started off. And we will have a lot of these conversations. If you want to grab Darrell on a one-on-one conversation, there's nothing much better place to be in Portland, Oregon. If not, the next stopover is in UK when he attends the conference there around. So I hope everybody found this useful about how to build relationship-centered organization. We will have this recording available in YouTube to be released by this Friday, but we really thank all of you for being here and spending a 1 hour of valuable time. And thank you so much, BRM Institute and Darrell, for shaping this great conversations. I'm just thinking your journey has just started. There's a lot way to do.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the
Thank you,
podcast.
everyone. Have a great day. So, yeah, so it's probably getting over, I think. I've just broadcasted it a little bit. It's taking some time. Okay. It's still not doing it. Okay, I'm just doing the